So let's look today. I'm going to do these problems so we can get a really good review of quite a few weeks ago what we started. So if we're multiplying decimals, if you remember way back at the beginning, we talked about multiplying a decimal by a power of 10, which is what we're going to be looking at with number 1. When you multiply a decimal by a power of 10 means 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million, right? Those are all powers of 10. And when you multiply a decimal by a power of 10, all you have to do, oh, my hand is getting in the way here. All you have to do is move the decimal point. So which way do you think you're going to move the decimal point? If you're multiplying something by 1,000, it's going to get a lot bigger. So you move the decimal point to the right, the same amount of number of zeros there are. So for instance, with this one, 67 hundredths times, we've got 1,000. So we've got 1, 2, 3 zeros in this power of 10. So it says how many zeros are there? 3. What is the product? We're going to move the decimal point to the right 3 spaces because we want it to get bigger because we're multiplying. So 1, 2, 3. We put the decimal point right here. You can see we've got to add a 0 here. So our answer is going to be 670, which makes sense. Here it's 67 hundredths. Here it's 670. We multiplied it 1,000 times. So go back and check your answers when you're doing your test. Make sure that you have, that it makes sense, that you're multiplying it. It should be a bigger answer. Now, the next thing we talked about after we talked about multiplying by a power of 10 like this is multiplying a decimal by a multiple of 10. What are multiples of 10? Multiples of 10 are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Those are multiples of 10. And when you have a multiple of 10, we talked about breaking it down into factors so that we can pull out a power of 10. So how do you factor 30? What can it break down into? If you remember this back several weeks, we changed 30 into 10 times 3. All right, so that means then, if you go over here, we have 10 and 84 hundredths times 30. Remember, we decided let's break this down into 10 times 3. So now we have this, which is a little bit easier because we can take this and we're back to there being a power of 10 right here. Oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do at all. We have a power of 10 right here. So that means we're going to be moving the decimal. Whenever you see a power of 10, just move the decimal. Which way are we going to move it? To the right to make it bigger. So 10 and 84 hundredths times 10, we move this decimal over to the right. So now this part of it is 108.4, and we still have to multiply by 3. So that you're going to have to do over here on this side. 108 4 tenths times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 1 is 25. 3 times 0 is 0. Plus 2 is 2. 3 times 1 is 3. Now that's not our answer because we have to go back and say, oh, there is 1 decimal place. So we're going to take this decimal and we're going to move it back over where it belongs. All right, so the product is going to be 325 and 2 tenths. Okay, that's a lot of steps, but what you're simply doing is you're factoring out that multiple of 10 so that you can get this 10 times 3. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. All right, the third thing we learned is when you have an exponent. When you have an exponent like this, remember this little number right here is the exponent. Really, you're doing the same thing as the power of 10. This number here, what is the exponent? 2. That 2 tells you how many places you're going to move the decimal point over. So you're going to move this decimal point once, twice, and it's going to go right there. So the product is 207.5. So This one here, multiplying by a power of 10 and multiplying by a power of 10. These are both the same. It's just that this one is written with an exponent and it tells you exactly how many spaces to move the decimal point to the right. And this one right here, you just have to count up the zeros. It's really only number 2 here where there's a multiple of 10 where you need to break it down and get a power of 10 times a number. Okay, those are the 3 types of problems we've got there. Okay, hopefully you can get some practice doing those on your own, those 3 types of ways. Let's go back here and move up to our next set of types of problems that you're going to see on your test. Okay, so these ones say, give a multiplication equation for the model. Okay, a multiplication equation, which you can see right here. They gave you little boxes to fill out. All right, how are we going to do that? Well, you see 4 groups here. There's one here, one here, one here, and one here. Each one of those, what is the decimal that is represented? All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3 strips that each represent a tenth. So you have 3 tenths, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths. So if we're writing those in the correct decimal places, we have 0 holes, right? We don't have any of those big boxes, the big square. 0 holes. We have 3 tenths, and we have 5 hundredths. Okay, so that's one of these. One of these right here is 35 hundredths. But we are multiplying it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So our multiplication equation is going to be 35 hundredths times 4. Okay, do you get that? Because each one of these, this is 35 hundredths, which we figured out, and then we multiplied it 4 times. So our answer is going to be, remember, a multiplication equation has an equal sign, and that's going to equal, well, let's figure that out. We've got 35, we're going to multiply it by 4. So, you know, you're going to ignore that decimal and just multiply as normal. Then you're going to go back and say 1, 2 decimal places means I'm going to take this decimal and move it once, twice to right there. So here is our equation right there. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and do the next one here. We've got, how many groups do we have? That's the easy part. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. So you know your multiplication equation is going to be 4 times whatever one of the groups represents. So here we've got, you can see we've got right here this whole box that represents 1 whole. Then we've got 3 strips, each representing a tenth. So we've got 1 tenth here, 2 tenths, 3 tenths. So we've got 1 and 3 tenths. So we have 4 times 1 and 3 tenths. What is that going to equal? Let's go over here and do the math. 4 times 3 is 12. There we go, 52. But we got 1 place past the decimal. We're going to move it over, and our answer is going to be 5 and 2 tenths. All right, last one, number 6. You can see right away how many groups are there right here. That's going to be our first factor. There are 1, 2, 3 groups. So 3 times what? Well, let's figure out what one of these groups is. Let's take this one right here. They're all the same, you can see. So we have 1 tenth, 2 tenths. So let's write that down. We've got 2 tenths, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths, right? So each one of these 3 sections is 26 hundredths. So 3 times 26 hundredths equals, what does it equal? 6 plus 1 is 7. So each one equals, the total equals 78 hundredths. So our multiplication equation down here, it's so little, hopefully you can see this, is 3 groups times each group has 26 hundredths equals 78 hundredths. All right, that will conclude that set of problems. Oh, I take it back. There's one more right there. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, we've got, you can see there's 2 sets here. Here's this one. I'm sorry, let me get this ready here. We've got this set, and then we've got this identical set. All right, so each set, let's see, we've got 1 whole, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths, and 1, 2, 3, 4 hundredths. So we've got 1 and 64 hundredths. All right, that's our first factor, times how many sets are there? There's 2 sets of them. So that's going to equal 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 1 is 2. Plus 1 is 3. We've got 1, 2 decimal places. We're going to move it 1, 2 spots over. So it equals 3 and 28 hundredths.